Okay, uh, we are good to go. Well, hi everyone. Welcome. My name is Marie-France, and I'm here with my colleague Nikki Weisenfeld, and we're part of the Global Strategic Partnerships team, and we're super excited to welcome you to Travel Week 2023. So thank you so much for joining us right now and also for joining our previous sessions that happened earlier on today. So here's a little bit of background on Travel Week. This is our second iteration of this event, which we kicked off in May of 2022. A few things have happened in the world since then. The news seems to never stop. So we're excited to be with you again to process it all, because we do believe that there is value in bringing our larger community of hotel partners together in one place to engage and interact with us and with each other, and to get a holistic view of how our business works, which is basically why Travel Week was conceived. So all of the hotels in the selection, you are all the foundation of our mission, which is, and you really do represent the very best in the world of hospitality. And it's the goal of our team to work with you as closely as possible to achieve our mission, which is to give our users an incredible experience, to promote your hotels in the best possible lights, and to bring you more bookings from our amazing customers. So what we'll hope that you take away from this week is that the idea of being part of the Tablet and Michelin Guide hotel selection means being a part of something that's much bigger. We want you to understand what you're getting out of this partnership and what you can put into it to accomplish our shared goals. Today, Nikki and I were super excited because we get to hear directly from folks who have been in the industry for a while and who know the ins and outs of a very unpredictable and sometimes temperamental business. So together, we'll tackle travel trends we've seen in 2023, how the industry has adapted to new customer and travel behavior, and how to best prepare for 2024. Before we do this, I do want to introduce you to our amazing panel. And just for ease for everyone to visually see who's all with us, I'm sharing with you this slide so you can see everyone's names. But essentially, and I'll start with Doran, who is the CEO of Plum Guide. In 2008, Doran founded Promise Communities, now C-Space, a company specializing in solving brand, innovation, and insight challenges through mass online collaboration. And then in 2016, he founded Plum Guide, which today has millions of annual users and over 40,000 of the world's best beautiful homes. So Doran, welcome, and thank you for joining our conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. We also have John Sutherland from the Nomad London. He started his sales career 14 years ago in New York City. He opened Mondrian Soho, and then he represented the New York region for Morgan's Hotel Group. He then began at Seidel Group in 2012, opening 2 key hotels in New York City, and then transferred to London to open the Nomad London as the Director of Sales and Marketing, and it has now been, I believe, 4 years. So welcome, John.
Thank you.
We then have Linda Hazy. After graduating from an elite school in France, Linda joined L'Occitane en Provence, where she played a pivotal role in expanding the travel retail department, both for regional and international retail, In 2017, she joined Sephora and the LVMH group. And quickly after that, she became the commercial director at Sephora France, overseeing all aspects of business and operations. And Linda made her way to the hospitality world in 2022, and she is now the CEO of Les Domaines de Fontenay, a group that basically sets to redefine the conventions of traditional hotels. Linda, bienvenue, and thank you for being here with us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much.
We then have Naomi Rose. She is the Director of Partnerships at Canyon Ranch Wellness Resorts. It's a group definitely geared toward wellness. Naomi leverages over 2 decades of expertise in hospitality, sales, and marketing. She definitely has a proven track record of driving revenue growth. She excels in curating unparalleled customer experiences and forging strategic partnerships with the hospitality industry. Naomi, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. We have Michelle Sharma. She currently is leading as the commercial director at Refinery Hotel Group. She has masterfully driven substantial year-over-year growth in room bookings and revenue. She's an expert, absolutely an expert in navigating and optimizing complex distribution channels. And I get to work with her quite closely on a regular basis. So it's really a pleasure to have her in this panel today. So Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And then we have Mike Rubenstein, the founder of Uproot Me, I'm so sorry. Mike is a luxury travel designer and the owner of his company, a Los Angeles-based boutique travel company founded in 2010. With over 20 years of experience in luxury travel, he partners with experienced travelers and proud owners of new passports, 100% of whom are repeat clients and referrals. And he basically also does custom trip planning service where he offers deluxe accommodations, private guides and drivers, insider access to unique local experiences, and 24/7 supports. On a regular basis, I'm super happy to say that Mike uses our platform as a pro agent to book stays for his clients. So Mike, it's also a true honor to have you part of this panel today to get your perspective.
Thanks so much. Good morning, everybody.
Okay, so I won't be sharing my screen for too long, but I just wanted to give you, again, a quick recap of our agenda today. As mentioned earlier in the introduction, we'll definitely tackle travel trends we've seen in 2023, how the industry has adapted to new customer behavior and travel behavior, and how to best prepare for 2024. And lastly, and I want to say this is almost just as important as the rest, is we really want this to be interactive, right? All of you in the audience. So please feel free to add your questions in the chat box or to raise your hand if you have any questions for any of the panelists throughout the conversation. We can certainly address them as we go, depending on what the topics are. But we'll also dedicate 5 minutes at the end of the session, to address some of the questions that we can cover during the conversation. So without further ado, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. So if you give me 1 second, stop presenting. Okay, we're back. Okay, so let's dive in. So 2022 had revenge travel written all over it, which left us wondering how, what 2023 would look like and what it would have in store for us between the continuing inflation, a potential recession, geopolitical conflicts, and wars. And yet, we saw that customers did not shy away from going on vacation, and hotel rates have been at the highest they've ever been. So I would love to get a brief overview for a few of you of what 2023 looked like for you in terms of occupancy rates and booking origin. So Michelle, I was wondering if we could start with you, if you could walk us through the summary of what 2023 looked like for you.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for today's panel. And I'm more than excited to really share some insights from this side of the world, as well as hearing more of, everyone, what you have to share. For New York City, it's very interesting. Like you said, 2022, I think revenge travel was such a buzzword for last year. This year, we just got some really, the latest industry trend is New York City's overall performance has seen double-digit growth to 2019. We are actually looking to end this year at a 14% growth over pre-pandemic. And 2024, we're also projecting over 6% growth year over year. And as we were just talking about how this geopolitical impact what we're seeing at the starting of this quarter, as New York City being the most resilient market, and we're always one of the fastest to bounce back. It's safe to say that at this moment, we have already mitigated the volatility. And by talking to our industry peers, as well as third-party vendors, everyone has shared that at the end of the fourth quarter, which we have only a little bit over 2 weeks ago to end this year, everyone has seen a tremendous growth in both occupancy and ADR. And one thing what we really has experienced is people are more focusing on one of the keyword that you also mentioned earlier is this experiential travel. And, instead of staying in a chain-wide brand, people are more looking to stay in a lifestyle hotel or boutique hotel, which can really provide this unique, sophisticated, tailored experience that, that they can really remember, create this memory to share with their family and friends. And that's something that, what we are seeing across the board. And very interestingly, for some of the newer supplies that has come into New York City market are mostly lifestyle hotels. The recent opening, especially some of the newer properties in the Nomad area, are really all focusing on the lifestyle, how to really curate the best experience to the travelers. And personally, when we're traveling right now with family, we really are looking into staying in a hotel that is known to provide the best service, of course, and also to create this experience and memories for our families.
That's that's amazing to hear, right? For your hotel and for New York in general, right? That's very interesting. When I think, and Refinery definitely has that lifestyle component, right? Which it's undeniable. When I think lifestyle, I also think Sidel Group, and I think of the Nomad London. So I was wondering if, John, you could walk us through also what 2023 looked like for you, as you were based in London, and what kind of customers have you gotten along this year?
Yeah, absolutely. We were interesting because, we're still in a ramp up, really. I mean, we opened 2 years ago in the heart of COVID, if you will. So, we were running 30% occupancy for the first, 8 months of the year. So every sort of month by month, it got better and better. And we really had a unique opportunity to sort of layer in this business sort of as we wished. I mean, we took a big pivot in our strategy by really going after that leisure business. And that's really what was driving London. You know, London's such a gateway to the rest of Europe. And when we look at our North American travel, which is 75% of inbound central London business, you know, we saw a lot of that leisure traveler throughout 2023. You know, when we were opening past Nomads, it was a lot more corporate, a lot more group, and we sort of pivoted, you know, coming out of COVID, out of 2022. And, you know, as Michelle said, coming out of that sort of revenge travel bubble that we all saw, you know, how do we sustain these occupancy levels? How do we sustain the ADR growth that, you know, we've promised to ownership? And it really was looking at leisure for us. But yeah, London is booming. It does not look to be slowing down into next year. We're experiencing a ton of new openings here in London, sort of similar to how New York City saw, like right before, you know, COVID the last 10 years. But it's in that ultra luxury set, which is a real interesting thing to sort of be, you know, up competing with some, you know, Peninsulas, Raffles. We have one Mayfair that just opened. And we have the Rosewood Chancery opening next year. So it's a really exciting time for the market. And we don't see any slowdown within next year. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's also very interesting. And it's interesting more so that, you know, it's across the Atlantic. So it's like two almost similar experiences, but transatlantic. Okay. Mike, I have a question for you from the perspective of a travel agent. What was 2023 like for you and your customers?
Thank you, Marie-France. Yeah, I mean, I started booking with Tablet in 2019, and my 2023 business doubled the 2022 business. The number of countries that I booked on Tablet doubled as well. I was just looking last night, and I had sent clients to 14 different countries through Tablet bookings. And it was fantastic. So far, I feel like I'm seeing slightly slower bookings for 2024, although it seems like folks are booking further in advance. So I'm working with clients already on summer plans for 2024. But yeah, I mean, 2023 was fantastic. Again, double the business with Tablet, double the number of countries. So it was a great year.
Mike, it's so fascinating to hear, and I'm sure it's music. It sounds like music to some of these folks' ears right now, because you know, we walked through this week through different data and trends sessions where we talked about how the booking window has shrunk. So, which of course always adds a little bit of stress, right? Because it's difficult to project what a year can look like when the booking window is shrinking. So to hear you say that customers are now, you know, planning trips for further along the way in 2024, that's actually very good to hear. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think you know, a lot of clients that are planning further in advance now for me are larger family groups who you know, maybe weren't so comfortable jumping into that revenge travel in 2022. You know, grandparents are taking grandchildren, or grandparents and their children are planning these large trips that, you know, for the last 5 years they weren't able to take. So yeah, I mean, spring, summer, a lot of folks are really working on those trips now.
Okay.
Just to jump in, there was an Expedia report that I just received last night for their trends for 2024. And one of the top trends that they are predicting is much more celebration travel. So people taking trips to celebrate retirement or birthdays, or, you know, really anything, get together to watch a TV show. So that's really interesting to, you know, to hear it from your perspective, Mike, and, you know, grandparents and great grandparents and everyone kind of getting in the mix finally again.
Right. That's interesting you say this, Nikki, because it's almost linked to my next question that was going to go to Naomi. I know 2023 was successful for you, right, based on the conversations that we've had, but you are not necessarily getting an international crowd, right? It's mainly a US crowd traveling to your property, but that is going there, to Nikki's point, really to for two purposes: wellness, but also to celebrate a special occasion. So I was wondering if you could let us know how 2023 was for you.
Yeah, so, you know, we are kind of back to pre-pandemic levels. I think there was a lot of pent-up demand for wellness in general that we've, you know, been well positioned for, obviously being a wellness resort group. And as I mentioned to you previously, you know, we see a lot more multi-gen travel. So kind of along the lines of what you were saying, Nikki, we're seeing more like grandparents bringing their children and then the grandchildren along with them. And we're a 40-plus-year-old company. So we have guests, you know, a very high return guest ratio, but guests who have been coming to us since we opened. So you know, they're now bringing the other generations within their family. So we did see a little softening this summer. And of course, we, you know, expected that to happen with this sort of demand for international travel. And as someone else on the panel said, you know, people are feeling safer to travel internationally. And all of our properties are located domestically in the United States. So, you know, we're really making up performance gains with ADR because, you know, there was a softening, and we sort of anticipate that's going to continue a little bit into the first quarter of 2024. But we're still, you know, at pre-pandemic levels, so still happy with the performance this year.
It's great. I'm curious, we've only chatted about hotels so far, and we have Duran here, who is kind of the expert on home rentals. So I would love to know from you what 2023 looked like for from your business and your perspective.
They allow, I'm sorry, they do our room service.
Oops, I think we have
Sorry,
someone.
there's someone I can.
There you go. It should be good.
There, okay.
We're good, yeah.
Yeah, I would
Hi,
love to know
yeah.
your perspective.
Happy to. I mean, obviously, we come at it from a different perspective. We're kind of high-end homes around the world. Compared to pre-COVID, we are, you know, more than 3 times the size, partially because we've grown and opened locations. But for us, 2023 has been a story of two halves. You know, the first half of the year was exceptional growth on every metric. So ADRs, occupancy of homes, don't quote me exactly, but pretty much every corridor of traffic. The second half has not been that way, which is interesting to hear that for many people it continued. And really what we saw in the second half was our more expensive corridors see a real slowdown. So Americans, for example, coming into London, into Paris, into Tuscany, and the other way around, you know, Brits going to California and so on, really slow down. Interestingly, you know, we do a lot of bidding on PPC. We could see that for the same corridors, Airbnb, Booking, Vrbo, really bidding aggressively. So they must have seen a slowdown themselves and kind of try to counter that. At the same time, on domestic kind of more value corridors, we've seen it maintain itself. So, you know, Brits going to UK holiday destinations, domestic travel in the US, that's maintained that strength from the first half of the year.
That's really interesting. And it's interesting to hear about the other home rental companies in the market and kind of what they might be, how they might be performing as well.
I mean, they for what it's worth, like we can see their impression share, so which is a sign of how heavily they're bidding. I mean, Airbnb for corridors of Americans coming into Europe, roughly 2 and a bit x their average bid. That was how aggressive they were keen to get more of that customer. Booking was about 60% up. We obviously bid down. I mean, they clearly decided they're happy to take a hit on profitability over demand, which is interesting. Yeah.
And if 2023 was a tale of two halves of the year, not to look too far into the future, but what are you looking for, at least for the first quarter of 2024?
Look, honestly, we're expecting a bit of the same. I actually just did last week, joined some consumer groups and some consumer calls. Our kind of bullseye customers, the, let's call it, mass luxury customer, and people are feeling the pains and cutting back. We are seeing that, especially with discretionary income. It's interesting to hear maybe a slightly higher end customers, some of the other team here sharing their thoughts, but we're kind of aware of that and promoting the slightly more better priced properties to the top of the search and that kind of thing.
Interesting. Well, actually, it's interesting you mentioned this, Doran, because in one of our sessions, we had presented findings from a third-party survey where people say that rising prices have impacted travel plans. And we didn't say that people weren't traveling anymore, but we just said that prices were affecting how people plan. So with increased rates, essentially, customers want to think that they're getting what they're paid for, and potentially even more. So this prompts, because we saw it along through this year, it prompted customers to head to destinations where they have a higher purchasing power. So Linda, I was wondering how it's been on your end. We know that the currency exchange, is in favor of the US dollar for now. So do you find that it has had an effect on Americans coming to France?
Yes, obviously, we saw it in France, especially in Provence. Globally, we saw that the ADR went really up almost everywhere. And the level of service was not going that high. So it's been a very challenging year, I think, for everybody to make our customers delighted about their experience in the hotel in France. Nevertheless, we really saw a lot of Americans here in Europe, in France, and in Tuscany. We just opened our first property in Tuscany this year, and we are a pretty young collection, but the share of Americans at the opening was already very, very high in Italy. And for the global numbers of the collection, we doubled the share of Americans in 2023 compared to 2022.
Wow. So that's very significant. Yes.
Yeah.
Could you remind just everyone how many properties are in Les Domaines de Fontenay, just to give people some context?
Yes, of course. So we have 11 properties, mainly in France. We have 2 properties in Menorca in Spain and 1 in Tuscany that we just opened in 2023. And most of our properties were once old country houses that we renovated. So we are a collection of boutique hotel, and we really see the trend of customers looking for different kind of experience, looking for something smaller. We have a today destination accessible by train. We have destination with beautiful gardens and landscape, and we see how important is it for French, European, and international customers to have this breeze feeling when you arrive in our properties, and to find something smaller, much more personalized, and maybe far from other luxury codes we had pre-COVID.
Okay, thank you.
That's really interesting that you say that, because we're seeing that in our data and in macro data as well, that people are really seeking out those new experiences. We know our clients are very into planning trips and going to new places. And one of the main trends that we have identified this year is this idea of traveling with a purpose. So traveling for wellness, traveling to engage with community, and then also with, Gen Z and millennial clients kind of becoming the bulk of our user base, we're seeing a lot more food-driven travel and pop culture travel as well. So we know from our own data in Northern Europe, 49% of Michelin Guide website users that looked at a hotel page in Northern Europe also looked at a nearby restaurant. So it's people are very interested in kind of combining those aspects on their trip. And we know that kind of in that same vein of travel being food driven, in an American Express survey from 2023, 47% of Gen Z and millennials said they have planned an entire trip around visiting a specific restaurant, which is kind of amazing. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that would, in my opinion, that would be unheard of. So Linda and John, maybe I know both of your properties kind of showcase really incredible dining experience. Have you found that to be the case where you're having people come specifically for the dining aspect?
Yes, obviously, for the gastronomy in Les Domaines de Fontenay, we have 1-star Michelin restaurants, but we also have, let's say, more bistro aspect in some of our restaurants. We also have a kind of chiringuito in some places. So we have very different dining experience, but we really see how important is it for the customer. They are really looking for experiences, and the experience goes through gastronomy. And beyond that, I think you were talking about purpose, and we see how important is it to understand what is behind the food that we're serving. We produce and sell our own organic certified products in our restaurants, and we see how important is it to the customer since COVID. And this is something that obviously we explain, but customers are asking for it. And I think this is a big difference. And this happens in the 1-star restaurant or in a regular bistro. So this is really a trend.
Yeah. And John, has it been similar for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, we put a huge emphasis on food and beverage here at Nomad, but mostly to attract that local crowd, because what we find is if the neighborhood and the local business is going to come in, that's where the travelers want. That's part of the experience. They want to stay and feel, how it would be in London. They want to mix and mingle with locals and sort of hang where, the fashion crowd might be, or the local Covent Garden crowd might drink, or, so we put a big emphasis on it, not so much attracting that international travel. It's more about getting those locals in for us, really, which all ties into that experiential travel for us.
Very cool. And I'm curious, Naomi, we know Canyon Ranch is very centered on wellness. It's in the name, wellness resorts. And I'm curious how you're gearing your strategy to target those customers and those guests who are seeking out that wellness aspect and that community aspect as well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We've seen sort of a trend, 10 years ago, it used to be all about physical wellness and physical health. And in the last few years, especially sort of post-pandemic, we've seen a trend towards, attention around mental wellness and mental health. We hear a lot from executives coming through on our executive health program. We are hearing about burnout and things that we didn't hear about like 5-6 years ago to the same level. So, we're finding more of our leisure travelers are seeking out things like our crafting experiences and getting out in nature and all things that are sort of combating this hustle culture that we have. Everybody's sort of seeking a digital detox when they're on our properties. So our programming department is working really hard to incorporate those kinds of activities next year. I mean, we already have great programming that meets that demand, but just really focusing in on the kind of experiences and kind of featured events and things that we offer that will drive traffic to our resorts that are centered around this sort of, digital detox and helping people with their sort of mental wellness, since that is such a big focus area.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think there's been such recognition recently, I think especially since the pandemic, how important that mental aspect is for people, and not just physical wellness, but really a holistic approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another purpose too, and which is something that Nikki raised, we talked also about the influence of pop culture on why folks would decide or want to go to a specific destination. And again, in the same study that that Nikki mentioned earlier on, the American Express survey from 2023, it was said that 70% of Gen Z and millennial respondents agree that they have been inspired to visit a destination after seeing it featured in a TV show, news source, or movie. So it brings me, of course, I'm going to have to ask, and this is specifically for our American audience. I'm sure that the folks that live in the US have somehow seen The White Lotus. So I was wondering, Mike, or even and Doran, if you have had any demands for hotel stays or home stays in Sicily to sort of get that Sicilian getaway after people have watched The White Lotus.
Sure, I'll jump in. Yes, certainly. I did see a lot of demand in 2023 and actually late 2022 for Sicily. It was, I lost track of the number of clients I sent to Sicily, and likely because of that reason. But I will just jump back before you add your thoughts, Doran. I'll just jump back to food. Certainly food is still the driver of many of my clients' decisions. And as Linda was saying, both high-end Michelin as well as local experiences. So I'd say that the food is the primary driver. I mean, for me to have clients that say I'm not too concerned about food is a rarity these days. But to answer your question, yes, definitely the White Lotus effect was in effect.
And it's funny because on the White Lotus, if you've seen it, which I'm assuming most of you have, one of the big jokes is that they only eat at the hotel restaurant the entire time. They're all there for like a week and they only eat at the hotel restaurant every single day per day. Sorry, go ahead, Doran. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Very similar, but we have a couple of properties that overlook. We have two actually that overlook that hotel or are in the vicinity of it, and we did a lot to push that and do some cheeky ads on social. So I don't know what came first, that or us kind of promoting it as a way of getting some attention. And just one thing on the experiential side, which I think hopefully is interesting, on our listing page, the second most clicked item is. We have a section called an under 10-minute walk. For cities, it's under 10-minute drive, and it always recommends 2 or 3 restaurants, 2 or 3 nice things to do that take up to an hour, and there's about 10 items. I won't go through the different categories. It's our second most click after the photography, which is very counterintuitive. You'd think it would be people looking at amenities, looking at the floor plan, opening up the text of the conversation that describes the property. No, it's our recommendation of what to do in under 10-minute walk, and sort of makes you think people appear to be buying the neighborhood as much, if not more, than they're buying the overall house and its design and so on.
I will just say, Doran, that's the first thing I click, even before the photography. So that's indispensable on your site.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
That's really cool.
That's actually a very great idea. I'm going to take that idea for our hotels, if you don't mind. We're gonna have a social highlight of under 10 minutes walk. Thank you for that.
That's amazing.
I do have one before we move on to Gen Z and millennials wanting more flexibility and so on. I did have one question, which is a question that we're all facing in general, but we did also read about customers looking for destinations that offered cooler temperatures, so I think about, for example, you, Linda, many of your properties are in Provence where it's been super warm. So I imagine that it is a concern for you to have potentially less customers wanting these super warm temperatures and potentially going to a more mountainous and cooler weather area. So the question is really for all of you, sort of what are your thoughts when I mention looking for cooler temperatures?
Yes,
I'll just oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lynn.
No, go ahead, Mike. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a really interesting question. I hadn't I hadn't thought about that or received specific inquiries based on that, but just as you were saying that, thinking, recently a handful of trips to Iceland, a handful of trips to Scotland. So yeah, that's something I'll keep an eye on. I hadn't thought about that.
Good to know. Go ahead, Linda. Yeah.
Come to New York City. That's all I can say.
And we really have big expansion plans for Les Domaines de Fontenay. And to be honest, we are looking for a new location in Scotland and Normandy in the north of France. And we are lucky because we have 2 properties plus 1 restaurant on the southwest of France. And we really see how this part of France is growing super fast. So clearly, I think it's a trend, and we really need to embrace it.
Right. Yeah. That's very interesting. Okay. Go ahead, Nikki.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I know, Naomi, your properties are sort of tend to be in more temperate areas. So I don't know if that's something you all have considered or.
Yeah. Actually, I think what I could add to that is we've sort of noticed that demand increase, especially so we have a property in Massachusetts in the Berkshires, and we used to shy away on our socials from featuring, all of our snow-based activities and things that you could do in the wintertime because it's our low season. And we'd really drive traffic and focus on our warm destinations in California and Arizona. But we've more recently embraced those like snowy activities and been featuring the kind of cozy atmospheres that we offer in Lenox, featuring the outdoor activities that you can do all winter long. And so we've really embraced that trend, and hopefully we're going to see that, the results from that. But we're sort of embracing the low season and saying there's actually a lot to do, and we're open 365. So, come visit us in the wintertime too.
Yeah, and not to bring down the conversation too much, but with, climate change being a very real factor in the world, the seasons, low seasons, shoulder, high seasons are going to be drastically different, sooner than we all think, I believe. So. Sorry to depress everybody.
No. It's so correct, and that's exactly why we're having this conversation. So
right.
No, absolutely. So moving on to more practical questions, and I know this is a pretty short answer. So, as mentioned earlier in the conversation, flexibility has been a key part of planning trips. 55% of customers said that they would like to have no plans in stone prior to traveling in 2024 so that they can remain flexible. I just have a quick question for you all as well is, are non-refundable rates a thing of the past? Yes or no?
I can take that question. That's actually a very interesting question because I think my short answer is yes, it is in the past, because really our target audience, like what everyone has just shared earlier, the audience is focusing more on experiences. And for those are not really someone that is very like budget conscious, or of course, rate definitely plays a major part in your overall planning, but your non-refundable versus flexible rates, if the gap is not, super substantial, you're not offering like 30% off, 40% off for non-refundable, it doesn't really make that much of an impact, because people now, knowing what would happen or what may not happen, my personal travel, like I would rather pay for additional, a little bit higher, a little bit more, just for a more flexible a rate that I can just like travel at ease. Just God forbid if anything happens, you can never predict. And really what we're focusing on is more value added versus non-refundable, which is really restricting a lot of flexibility. And like everyone has said, I also learned from today is travel with purpose. So if someone has already planned things with a longer lead time way ahead, then I'm not going to restrict that with a strict non-refundable, which we have actually loosened that. 2024 we have not really been activating any non-refundable for both hotels.
We've kind of seen the opposite trend here. We're
Very
actually
interesting.
seeing the flexible rate sort of dip because, people want to see a value. Hotel rates are so high at the moment that people are willing to say, okay, let me book an advanced purchase, non-cancelable, and take that risk. And, if there is industrial action, if there's another COVID breakout, like there's sort of, we will sort of waive it, but sorry, I'm hearing feedback. I don't know if it's me or not. But we've sort of seen a different trend. And when I tried to book in New York City, back in October, I could not find a flexible rate to save my life. Every hotel was selling advanced purchase, non-cancelable. And I was like, I'm traveling for business here. I might need to be flexible, and it was really, really challenging to find, any hotel that was offering me a flexible rate. So I kind of think the trend is changing. Hotels got so burned for so long in COVID with flexible rates because we all had to give these 24-hour cancels. And now we're like, well, it's, the tides have changed a little bit. So I think having both on offer is always going to be the key, and how big of that, discount differentiation will matter, more and more. But to your point, Michelle, it's a lot about value adds. It's, cocktails at the bar, it's breakfast, it's cocktail experiences, it's private tours of the neighborhood, which we'll do, of the building, of our art program, and that more experiential value add that people are seeking. That's what we're finding.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was going to add to that from a home's perspective. We the homeowner gets to choose. They have 5 cancellation policies, and they get to choose how flexible they want to go. They can't choose 2 at different rates, so there's a difference here. But pre-COVID, just under 15% of our homes were fully flexible. Today, it's 60%. The interesting thing is the conversion rate from viewing a property to booking is 30% higher. There's a 30% jump in conversion rate when they go from the strictest cancellation to the most relaxed cancellation policy. So you can do a calculation, and we work with our homeowners to do it. What kind of cancellation rates can you expect? Is it likely to be worth your while to do that? But we do see a jump in bookings as you move to that, and a jump in cancellations. But you do see a jump in conversion.
So maybe the not the final answer, but maybe both will continue to exist, but it will, how often you rely on advanced purchase rates, for your revenue strategy will depend on, where you are as far as need and what you're projecting. And
it's all going to be based on that like demand calendar, Nikki. Like over Wimbledon, we can do advanced purchase, non-cancelable, non-flexible rates, but in January we will be as flexible as possible for you. So I think
very true. And really at the end of the day, it's a people business, and we've had quite a few guests reach out to us, booked a non-refundable, but because life happened, ended up we'll have to waive it. So when incidents like this happen more often, then it really got us to think, with a 10% or 15% slightly lower rate for non-refundable, does it really make sense for us? We would rather focus on just offer a slightly more attractive rate and then to get those early booker. But at the end of the day, we really want to provide the service, or we understand, life happens.
Right. Well, in a similar fashion, it's kind of a yes or no question, and that goes also to all of you. And Naomi, this actually also is linked to something that you and I discussed on Monday. So we've seen consumers combining work and personal travel. I believe, Naomi, you mentioned that you've seen in the most recent years more customers with laptops at your resorts. So my question is, does working remote, has this flexibility sort of cannibalized business trips overall? And I'm just curious to know what your answer is on that. I know I'm saying yes or no, if you could answer yes or no, but what can you predict when it comes to business travel for the years to come? I know we all want it.
I guess I can jump in and just, you and I already discussed on Monday sort of anecdotally what we've seen, but, we are focusing on like our corporate group strategy and executive retreats and things, and to meet the demand of, everyone is working remote. So there are a lot of our corporate clients who are looking to come together in a wellness retreat, whether they're, spread out internationally and they all need to group up once a year or what have you. We're looking at how we can meet the demands of sort of that remote work traveler who needs to spend some in-person time together in a retreat fashion, which of course we have a nice venues to accommodate that.
And Mike, with your clients, are you seeing that business travel aspect falling away, or is it more about combining, or is it all vacations for you?
Yeah, I'm really all leisure travel. So unfortunately, I don't really have anything to add for the business side of things.
Are you finding that your clients are taking maybe longer trips and combining work, or are they just strictly offline?
For the most part, it's pretty much offline. As Naomi was saying, a mental break from the grind is what I'm seeing. Everybody really just looking to disconnect. Now that business travel has rebounded so dramatically, it seems like my incredibly busy clients are, when they're planning these leisure trips, that's really all they're focused on. They're leaving their laptops at home.
So I think what we can really share from New York is our corporate demand in Midtown area. Like, we've seen it come back to a pre-COVID level already, the second quarter of last year. And what is really interesting is by just following more on a higher level, overall market intelligence. So the real estate on the commercial side, so the office space has actually, the vacancy rate has surged up to over 70% than 2019's level. And the last stats that we were seeing actually just at the beginning of this month, New York City there is some 96 million square feet of office real estate available for lease in the city. So what we're seeing is, as more companies are offering the flexibility for people to work remote, but the need for those individuals to actually travel more has definitely been filling that gap. And another angle is really like by talking to the real estate, our counterpart, or just overall the presence of, or the a very interesting pivot. Some of the real estate owners for those commercial space, they are converting it into residential. And, you know, just because of right now with interest rate, rentals has also in the city, like the rental price has gone way up, like skyrocketing. Some of those owners are also looking into converting those space into hotels. So you're also getting a little bit shift to the supply side. You know, for us, this is why like it's just so fascinating for overall this market condition to ever evolving. Like it'll be interesting for us to see in the next year or 2-3 years of how it plays on both demand and supply side in this major market. But you know, we're fortunate, at least overall, this market has been seeing a very strong corporate performance since the second quarter last year.
That's great. I know that's not necessarily the case in all markets that have relied on that in the past, but that's good to hear. So I know we just have a few minutes left before we wrap up. So we just wanted to touch briefly on 2024 projections. You know, one of the trends that we've talked about in other sessions is this idea of tourism or people gathering for large events. So I'm curious, Linda, the 2024 Olympics are going to be in Paris. So I'm wondering if you're expecting, you know, more business, less business, like how that's going to affect your projections for 2024.
We have only one city hotel, which is in Marseille, where we're going to have some Olympic Games. And then we have one hotel, which is an hour away from Paris, Le Domaine de Primard. Nevertheless, obviously, we see 2024 as a great opportunity with the Olympics to grow the business. We think the hotels have to be super smart to manage well this moment. We're gonna have to find the right balance between the cash boost and at the same time keeping our regular customers and our loyal customers not to make them disappointed. We expect to see also some special deals maybe at the last minute. Today, to be honest, it's not very easy to know what is happening. Everybody is still waiting a bit of, should we raise the prices? Should we don't know. So it's very interesting, but I think what is most interesting, and it's what happened in London, is that the year of the Olympics was good, but the year after the Olympics went even better. We are really expecting for a halo effect for the years to come for France and from Paris. So we are ready for that. And we really expect a very good 2024 for France.
That's great. And anyone else, if you have any crystal balls you want to bring out and let us know what you're thinking about 2024.
Well, we're hoping Taylor Swift can have another concert, you know?
She's going to Europe.
Really?
So.
I know, not like, yeah, it's tremendous just to see how much like merchandise and just overall that tour has produced just for, you know, the overall boost of the economy. So some almost like $6 billion has been generated from her concert.
We have some bona fide Swifties on our team, so we always love a Taylor mention.
Doran, I can see you wanted to say something because your perspective is super interesting also for us.
No, I was I mean, I was more thinking about the Paris Olympics thing. I mean, we sold out of absolutely everything we had within 10 days of when the tickets were allocated.
Wow.
And we are now trying very hard to go homeowner by homeowner to get them to open their calendars for the event. And I think, as you alluded to, Linda, many are sort of waiting to see whether they want to use it for themselves, but also kind of, you know, not wanting to open to understand the lay of the land. And many are like, yeah, we'll open it, but at absolutely astronomical prices. So that, and for us, the big trend, I mean, more generally in homes, we're just seeing a general trends on the flight to quality. It goes without saying, but I think when we got started, you know, we'd speak to customers and it's a bit of a caricature, but if people arrived and they didn't get robbed and they got into the house, they thought it was great. And the market in general, you know. And I think then they wanted to have the bedding matching and then some service. And you know, now, I mean, 75% of our homes offer fridge fills for the day of arrival, daily cleaning. Most guests request it, and I just think that's going to continue and continue and continue. And look, homes are so far from a hotel in terms of being able to deliver that, and I don't think it can ever get to that level because the economics are complicated to service a home that way. That's kind of in the middle of the city. They're also quirky things, homes. You know, you can have a £6 million home in London, and you know the elevator's scary, and the Wi-Fi doesn't work in the third bedroom, and it's still worth £6 million as a home. But we're just seeing this continued trend towards quality, and we are obsessing about that and trying to move all our homes in that direction and the service levels around them.
It's funny you say that. I have a friend here. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I have a friend here who just opened an Airbnb and a ADU, a separate unit outside her house. Sorry, I shouldn't say Airbnb, a rental home.
I'm at my parents' house and they're still going, we should get an Airbnb. I'm like, what?
It's part of the vernacular now, for better or for worse. But she's marketing it as sort of like a hotel like experience in a rental home, essentially. So it's like a suite, and it's all, you know, the linen quality, the design, the amenities, everything is very much like this is what you would get in a hotel, but with all the benefits of a rental. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Oh, yeah. Nice. I'd be interested in the name, but I'll drop you a note.
Well, thank you all. We're 5 minutes past the hour. So we definitely don't want to take too much of everyone's time. First of all, we want to thank the panel. You've all been so insightful. I love the fact that we also shared tips with each other during the course of this conversation. That's exactly the purpose of this chat, right? And for you in the audience, you can contact us at this email address if ever you have any follow-up questions, or if you have questions for the panelists that you may not have thought about during the course of this conversation. And please join our next webinars. You can find them in the invitation that was sent to you. You can find upcoming ones for tomorrow. And that is it for this hour, at least. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. It's really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.